Eliminate Boko Haram from the face of the earth. President Buhari orders armed forces.
Our armed forces must embrace the wind of change that is blowing across the country for good.
Federal Executive Council approves reduction of fees for national examinations.
From January 2019, JAM fees will reduce from 5,000 to 3,500 to 3,500.
3 tiers of government receive 788 billion naira as revenue for the month of October.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we examine the policy document of the Social Democratic Party, which is getting the basics right. We will also take a look at the challenges of disease control in Nigeria.
In the last 2 days on Good Morning Nigeria, we have interrogated the campaign policy thoughts of the 2 major political parties in Nigeria, the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, and the opposition People's Democratic Party, the PDP.
Of course, Kirian, it is part of our series of conversations on the 2019 campaign documents of the various political parties that have taken part in the general elections of 2019. Now, we have examined the next level document of the APC as well as the PDP's Let's Get Nigeria Walking Again campaign document and policy.
You are indeed right, Kingsley, and the key campaign actors in both parties have had to explain their agenda from job creation to infrastructure development, human capital development, healthcare, and so on.
That's right, Kirian. And in fact, some of the promises in the campaign documents that we have reviewed so far are quite interesting, especially pertaining to jobs and wealth creation, with figures being bandied in the millions. But then those behind the promises are resolute that the promises will be fulfilled.
Yes, indeed. And they say time will tell. And in continuation of our discussion series on the 2019 campaign documents of various political parties, we shall today have stakeholders from the Social Democratic Party, the SDP, to evaluate on the thrust of their 2019 campaign policy document, getting the basics right, and the roadmap towards achieving it.
Well, Kirian, going down memory lane, you'll recall that there was the Social Democratic Party of the 90s, and that party, of course, was the one that won the June 12, 1993 elections. But, of course, today we are seeing a new Social Democratic Party that is also contesting the presidency in February next year.
And one would wonder whether there's any affiliation between the present SDP and the defunct SDP.
All right, but if you take a look at the key actors who were the SDP of old, you are unlikely to find them in the new SDP. Yes. Okay.
All right.
All right, Kirian, of course, as we were taking a look at the policy document of the SDP today, as we have indicated, plus the issue of the challenges of managing diseases in Nigeria. Kirian, there have been a number of outbreaks. Cholera has claimed hundreds of lives in the country. There have also been issues of yellow fever lately out of Edo State, plus the fact that this is the dry season, and the news usually with the dry season is the outbreak and spike in cases of cerebrospinal meningitis. So those are the 2 topics that we shall be taking a look at on Good Morning Nigeria today in our conversation segment. And on that note, I'd like to welcome you to the program, reaching you, as always, live for the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
Well, and I am Kirian Umai, also joining Kingsley to welcome you to today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. And you know that, as usual, we shall present our companion segments, which will include newspaper review, business, sports, and foreign. But first, Comfort Amodu is on standby with the morning news. Good morning, Comfort.
Good morning, Kirian and Kingsley. And here's the morning news. Members of the nation's armed forces engaged in the renewed onslaught against terrorism and insurgency have been given marching orders to ensure total elimination of Boko Haram from the face of the earth. President Muhammadu Buhari, who gave the order in Maiduguri, challenged the troops not to be distracted but remain focused and committed as war against terror is a must-win. The president was speaking at the opening of the Chief of Army Staff 2018 Annual Conference, the Borno State capital.
I know that you are doing your best to reverse this trend, and I want to assure you that no effort will be spared in providing the necessary support you require to complete the task. We remain committed to ending the crisis in the Northeast.
Chairman of the Summit of Heads of State and Government of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, President Muhammadu Buhari, has convened a consultation meeting of heads of state and governments of the LCBC for Thursday, 29th November to take place in N'Djamena, Chad. Special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Femi Adesina, says the one-day meeting will review the security situation in the areas affected by Boko Haram insurgency and adopt measures to enhance the capacity of the multinational joint task force to meet challenges of securing the areas. Presidents of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, member countries of Chad, Cameroon, Niger, and the Central African Republic President of Benin Republic and countries contributing to the multinational joint task force are expected at the meeting. And President Muhammadu Buhari says the governing APC will neither avoid its responsibilities nor relent until the desired peace is fully restored to the home of peace and neighboring communities. Speaking at the Palace of the Shehu of Borno during a Katsu visit, the president, however, made case for continuous sharing of intelligence by the people with law enforcement agencies towards hastening the peace process.
Excellency, wish to appreciate the enormous contribution of the Nigerian Army in fighting this terror group and bringing peace to most parts of Borno since you assumed the leadership of this country as the President and Commander-in-Chief in the last 3 years.
Of course, people of Borno State know what this administration has done in the last 3.5 years. It used to be much worse. Please try and understand that this government is for you and is for this country.
Now, it's good news for parents and guardians as the Federal Executive Council Wednesday approved the reduction of examination fees paid by students for SSCE, JAM, and other national examinations. Minister of Education Adamu says the reduction has become imperative as the federal government finds no justification for the high cost students are made to pay for the examinations.
From January 2019, JAM fees will reduce from 5,000 to 3,500 for the UTME. For the senior secondary school certificate charged by NECO, it will reduce from 11,350 to 9,850. And for the basic education certificate by NECO, again, it will be reduced from 5,500 to 4,000.
The National Peace Committee has pledged to put in its best in ensuring free and fair elections in 2019. Chairman of the committee, General Abdusalam Abubakar, gave the assurance after a meeting with the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in Abuja.
On our part, we'll do the best we can in order to help sanitize the political arena. We are all Nigerians, we see what is happening. All I can say is that we will sanitize the polity to make sure there are no hate speeches, to make sure there is decent campaign during election, where there will be no name calling.
And the need to have Nigeria united as one indivisible entity after the 2019 general election has again been brought to the fore. This is the position of the Patriotic Forum of Presidential Candidates during a media briefing in Abuja.
We are Democrats committed to nation building and to the establishment of a strong, united, vibrant country.
We must be presidential in our dealings. We must be able to know that Nigerians come first in whatever we are doing.
Meanwhile, the Senate has confirmed the appointment of Olanipekun Olukoyede as Secretary of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. The confirmation followed the consideration of the report of Senate Committee on Anti-Corruption and Anti-Financial Crimes Commission as presented by its chairman, Senator Chukwuka Utazi.
I think at this rate, it's not about the committee any longer. What we need to do at this point, sir, is for the debate, for the report to be discussed, and then you put the question, and everybody will vote the way he wants.
Let's go the whole hog, pass this. If those who don't want this report to pass, based on the recommendations, they can vote and carry the day.
Will the Senate approve the nomination of Olanipekun Olukoyede Esquire as Secretary of the Economic and Financial Crime Commission? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Now, what is the challenge of improving the Nigerian education system? Are there inadequacies in the curriculum, and should there be a new approach in funding? These are some of the key questions that dominated plenary at the House of Representatives when lawmakers debated a motion by Representative Ayodele Oladimiji seeking reform to Nigerian's tertiary education system.
The level of the quality of education begin to its youth.
We need a proper educational framework for our country.
The only way we can have different results is to begin to change the way we do things.
And away from that, the three tiers of government have distributed 788 billion naira as revenue for the month of October. This is coming at the end of the National Council on Finance and Economic Development in Abuja.
Distribution is as follows. Total gross revenue statutorily is 682.161, while VAT, as I mentioned, is 105.172. There is an exchange gain of 0.806 billion.
That's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria will continue with Kinsley and Kirian after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
My name is Hadia Halita Aliu. a NITEL pensioner, having served very meritoriously and even serving on the Pension Reform Steering Committee, I ended up without a pension. The National Council on Privatization, under the chairmanship of Vice President Atiku Abubakar at that time, decided to pay us 3 years pension on a take it or leave it basis. Over 16,000 NITEL, MTEL pensioners have struggled to get their pensions restored. Unfortunately, all attempts with successive administrations, did not yield any dividends. The quality of our lives, has been severely impacted, by the stoppage of our pension. President Muhammadu Buhari heralded good tidings. Over 10,000 of our members have already been restored to payroll, and we are very, very happy. We are very, very grateful.
Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. Every day, 16,000 children under the ages of 5 and thousands of adults die from infectious diseases. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily in unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilets, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's One Capful for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure, endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
Use Dettol Skin Jelly, which protects against germs for a healthy, smooth skin every day.
You see, watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We now go to business. Investors lose 54.83 billion naira as Nigerian Stock Exchange All-Share Index dips.
The federal government, in line with its strategic plan to manage its debt profile, reduced the total Nigerian treasury bills issued and allotted by 1.27 billion naira in June this year to 1.65 trillion naira from 2.92 trillion naira in the same period of 2017. According to the Central Bank of Nigeria, the total Nigerian's minimum term debt management strategy issued and allotted was 1.65 trillion naira apiece, indicating a decrease of 1.27 trillion naira or 43.56% below 2.92 trillion naira within the same period, while the total public subscription stood at 3.22 trillion naira compared to 3.96 trillion naira. The structure of holdings indicated that deposit money banks, including foreign investors, took up 920.07 billion naira or 55.65%. Mandate and internal funds customers, including CBN branches, was at 692.61 billion naira and 40.69 billion naira or 2.46% for merchant banks. The successful bid rates in the market ranged from 10% to 12.55% for the 91-day. Meanwhile, Afrexim Bank has projected that the Intra-African Trade Fair 2018 will provide access to $25 billion in trade finance deals. The event, which has been organized by Afrexim Bank in collaboration with the African Union Commission in Cairo, Egypt, next month, is expected to draw more than 70,000 visitors. President of Afrexim Bank, Professor Benedict Orama, said the event provides a platform for exhibitors to showcase their goods and services to buyers and sellers and offer opportunities for business-to-business exchanges. The trade fair will also provide access to $25 billion in trade finance for deals concluded at the event. And next is the closing figures of stocks on NSE.
right, thank you very much there for the business package. Next for us now is a look at the stories on the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
And Bayo Atebe, our newspaper reviewer, has just joined us. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Kylian. Thank you. Good morning, Kinsley.
All right, Bayo.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, pleasure. Good to see you. Let's take a look at this story. Okay, there are stories that are common to the front pages of the papers this morning. News out of the front lines, that's the Boko Haram and the Nigerian government, as well as, of course, the Nigerian military. Let's take a look at the Daily Independent newspaper. Daily Independent has it as a kicker. Boko Haram attacks, fears as army setbacks cast shadows over 2019 election. With the rider, wipe out the terrorists from Earth's surface, Buhari orders military. And you can see the photograph on the front page of the paper after the Metele Boko Haram attack, President Buhari second left there, as well as the chief of army staff and others during the president's visit to wounded soldiers at the military hospital in Maiduguri. Of course, the president was in Maiduguri yesterday for the opening of the chief of army staff's conference. Kylian, I think we'll take these stories and then we'll come back to others.
Yes.
We also have that Boko Haram on Daily Trust. There's a lead story. It says Boko Haram, Buhari, Debi, that's it, is Debi, and 4 leaders meet in Chad today. It's a must-win war. President and army vows to counter loss. Together, of course, with the photograph that you saw, similar to the one on the front page of the Daily Independent.
As a matter of fact, all the national lists we have here all have that photograph in the front page. If you go to Daily Sun newspaper, you see the same photograph, but it captured this way: Buhari, we will end Boko Haram madness with the rider promises modern weapons as ACF calls for inquiries. The photograph also shows the president visiting the wounded in the hospital there in Maiduguri yesterday. Now, there are other stories.
But that's right, Kylian. I was wondering, maybe Bayo should discuss this first, and then we'll return to other
because it's very critical. The president has encouraged the Nigerian soldiers that they should not be distracted, but remain focused and committed to eliminating Boko Haram. The president, who was in Maiduguri yesterday for the annual Chief of Army Staff Conference, said, as president, I am determined to ensure that every citizen feels safe and secure in all parts of our country. He identified recent setbacks at Jilli, Arege, and Metele, and enjoined the soldiers that it is very painful. He is painfully aware that gallant officers and soldiers have paid the supreme price in the anti-terror operation. He says, we remember and mourn with their loved ones. I must convey the gratitude of government and people of Nigeria to the late soldiers and their families for their heroic sacrifices. The president, who later visited injured soldiers, had told the chief of defense staff that unity must be maintained within the services and war on terrorism is a must win. Meanwhile, the president is to chair a meeting of the Lake Chad Basin heads of states and government at N'Djamena today. The meeting is to be attended by Chad, Niger, Cameroon, Central African Republic, and Benin, as well as all nations contributing troops to the joint military force. There are indications that some nations had withdrawn, particularly Chad, had withdrawn their troops from the joint military task force, and also Chad, that had closed his border, had left its border open. That was why the fringes of Lake Chad have become the target of attack. But the worrying thing is, when a nation is at war, that war should not be a subject of politics. It's very disheartening that Nigerian soldiers are putting their lives on the line to defend our nation, and people are describing their sacrifices as massacre. Even people stand up in the National Assembly and make comments that can demoralize our soldiers. In other climes, when the nation is at war, and it becomes a subject of discussion in the National Assembly or the legislature, it is done behind closed doors because of security implications. We should not play politics with everything.
Yeah, and to add to what you just said, there's this caption here on the New Telegraph, just besides the photograph. You say army, because of course, from what you've said, a lot of people have also been giving figures over for a week now. People have been coming up with figures over 100 and what have you. But New Telegraph, captured what the army is saying with respect to the number. He said we lost 39 soldiers, 43 injured in 2 weeks. It says from the Metela attack, army lost 23 soldiers. It's on page 3 of a New Telegraph. That goes to show that people didn't have the proper information with respect to the number of soldiers involved, in this mayhem.
Usually, when such unfortunate incident happens, the armed forces must make sure that the families of those concerned are contacted before they start giving out figures. But on the social media, you have photographs of soldier casualties from elsewhere being posted, and some are claiming hundreds of soldiers have been killed. And that does not help us as a nation. We are at a war. This war is an asymmetrical war.
All right, Bayo, thank you very much. Let's return to the other headlines. Now we'll go back to the Daily Independent newspaper. Above the nameplate, we'll take one of the headlines there. Federal government probes Panama Papers and Central Bank of Nigeria 2006 bank bailout. Federal government probes Panama Papers and CBN 2006 bank bailout. That story continues on page 5. And then also there on the front page, you have other headlines. Actually, the second lead story, just below the photograph on the front page of the Daily Independent newspaper, it says, kudos as federal government slashes JAMB, NECO, and BECE fees. And another headline there, tension as two Anambra Assembly factions plan sitting today. And Akwa Ibom Assembly crisis, women and youth protest alleged police involvement, and teleology yet to fulfill conditions to take over Nine Mobile. This is according to the NCC. Yeah.
All right, let's return to the New Telegraph. The New Telegraph once again. Above the nameplate, federal government vows to recover $7 billion bailout funds from banks, proves IOCs over tax evasion, wants Mobile to refund $1.9 billion. And below the nameplate, we have some stories there. EFCC recovers 116 cars, 20 properties from suspected fraudster. It's on page 9. We also told you about FAC and federal government estates, local government share 788.139 billion naira in October. That's on page 3. ICPC rearranges ex-IGP Hindero over 578 million naira fraud. Details on page 4. Of course, FEC slashes JAM NECO exam fees. Approved 9,600 billion for 11 ecological projects. Pages 3 and 35 have that story. Now, the main headline on the New Telegraph: stay away from politics. Buhari warns military, charges troops to eliminate Boko Haram. ACF, why we won't endorse Buhari Atiku. Abu Salami, Rivers, Northeast flashpoints of 2019 elections. Now, below the photograph, Akwa Ibom crisis, youths disrupt mobile operations with 2 riders. Senate probes invasion of assembly. APC calls for state of emergency on page 6. Bayo.
Well, the protests in the Akwa Ibom State of Assembly, and of course, there's also some upheaval happening in Anambra State House Assembly. The women that were protesting yesterday were led by the Commissioner of Women Affairs, Dr. Glory Edet, while the youths had gathered at the ExxonMobil facility, and they were claiming that federal government was using their oil resources to fuel insecurity against Akwa Ibom goose that lays the golden eggs. They call for the deployment of the Commissioner of Police as well as the head of the rapid response officers. The call for the deployment of the Commissioner of Police was first started by Governor Udom Emmanuel. Then it was also demanded by a resolution of the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly. The governor has, according to the report, the governor had disrupted the 5 legislators who were attempting to impeach him. And the Speaker of the Akwa Ibom State House Assembly, his name is Nofiok Luke, has secured a High Court of Uyo's interim injunction to restrain another, the factional leader of the State House of Assembly, Nsen Ituem, from parading himself as Speaker. Meanwhile, the Senate has also given its police committee 48 hours to investigate. In Anambra State, a similar situation is happening. The State House of Assembly was trying to sit at the plenary, and rival members, led by the former Speaker, Madu Agu, also came in there, and it has become a state of unrest there. In Kogi State, the members of the State House of Assembly had been on a 2-week recess. They were required to resume on Tuesday, but they refused to resume. They say that they are boycotting plenary because they are owed salaries and allowances. They say that 75% of their 2017 constituency allowance was only paid. That of 2018, nothing has been paid to them. And they say, no money, no sitting. So you will say, legislators also cry, just like the workers.
While we are having riotous situations in the houses of assembly at the state level, is it all of the because of the coming election, or is there any implication that?
Not necessarily. But I don't know whether you and I were on set earlier in the week, and Bayo, you recall this. We had referenced it that there's been a great deal of challenge that the polity has faced with regard to the State House of Assembly since 1999.
Yes.
Since 1999. That's, of course, the National Assembly had its own fair share, but stability, of course, ensured that they were able to take care of whatever internal crisis that they were facing. But, Kirian, you know, each time they want to change their principal officers, whether Speaker or Deputy Speaker or Majority Leader and so on and so forth, there's always mayhem. Yes. And Bayo did say that, rightly so, that sometimes some of the state governors have been fingered as being behind some of the crises that they have faced. Yes.
And what surprises people is the fact that in many cases, minority becomes majority. I wonder how 5 members would sit and impeach a speaker. It is not acceptable when it comes to
the law. That's one, we also pointed that out. But there's a story that we are missing. The federal government reducing the examination fees for
JAMB. I was coming to that.
NECO, yes. I think it's something that you should mention before. Just take one or two other stories. Let me just take one or two other stories from Daily Trust, and Bayo, you come to that. Daily Trust, very quickly, below the nameplate, says passengers stranded over aircraft shortage. This is on page 17 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Passengers flying out of Lagos to different parts of the country are having challenges on account of aircraft shortage. And right at the foot of the front page, Senate passes bills for 10 tertiary institutions. Page 10. On page 5, PDP Presidential Campaign Council for inauguration today. And lastly, federal government cuts 1,500 naira from UTME, SSE, JSCE fees. Okay.
Yes, it's a respite for parents now, so that with the reduction in the school fees, it means that at least they will have some respite. However, there is a challenge there now for Joint Admission and Matriculation Board. You recall that in the last 2 years, JAMB has returned a sum of 15.6 billion to federal coffers. And we had highlighted on this program here on Good Morning Nigeria that if JAMB does not have any business other than sales of forms, it means it was making money from the sales of form, and there's need to look at the reduction of it. And gladly, government has looked into it. But the implication here is that if I may be allowed to fly an arithmetic kite, JAMB's turned in about 7.8 million when they were selling the forms at about 5,000. So I can predict now that the forms have come down to about 3,500 following government pronouncement yesterday. Given the same number of students that will apply for the form, it's likely that at 3,500, JAMB is still going to make between 4.8 to about 5.96 billion as a refund. And that, to me, is still quite very high because the essence, is...
JAMB and these other institutions, they are not revenue agencies. That's the major point, Kirian.
They are revenue agencies, but they need to raise some funds too because the JAMB staff also paid salaries. Well, that's a topic for another day. Now let's go to the editorials. Taming the malaria scourge, that's on Daily Sun, page 29 of Daily Sun. Now, it is worrisome that in spite of the coordinated global efforts to curtail its spread, malaria has remained endemic in some parts of the world. Nigeria is one of the countries that harbor the disease. The World Health Organization recently disclosed that after about 2 decades of decline, malaria is on the rise again in Nigeria and 12 other countries. In its 2018 World Malaria Report, the Global Health Agency confirmed global increase in malaria cases, rising from 217 million in 2016 to 219 million in 2017. Bayo.
Yes, since 1902, when Ronald Ross discovered the malaria parasite, the malaria had been on the decline, but of recent there has been this resurgence. And the resurgence, particularly in Africa, particularly in countries around Nigeria, Congo, Madagascar. And if you look, they are usually countries with very large area of basins and water. In South America, the endemic areas are Brazil, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. And the worrying is that while the Asian tigers, India and Pakistan, have recorded a reduction, Ethiopia and Rwanda too have recorded a reduction. For us in Nigeria, there is an upsurge. And so that is worrying. And the editorial is saying that there's a need to look at the malaria as a challenge and declare war on malaria. The challenge now is what has become of the research to try and target the carrier of the parasite, that is the female Anopheles mosquito, to eliminate it.
Well, I think to eliminate malaria, we have to do a high level of fumigating our forests and what have you. That's what I think most developed nations did to, of course, extinct the Anopheles mosquito you are talking about. And at this point, Bayo, I would like to thank you for today's analysis on what the papers are saying. We will do the same tomorrow. We hope to see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're going to take a break now. When we come back, we will get ready for the first leg of our conversation, which is on the policy document of one of the political parties, the SDP, Social Democratic Party. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual.
For the three put.
You're welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah.
You take that one. You take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have.
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice.
Are you sorry?
That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mom to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. No be only to connect lights. Come you and yourself now. Now wow. Oh boy, come down now. Oga Kasali electrician, who would they look for with this? Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, letting him talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from over.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. And if you just tuned in, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Our discussion series on the 2019 campaign documents of various political parties continues today as we focus on the campaign thrust of the Social Democratic Party, that's the SDP. And to set a tone for that conversation, let's join our correspondent Kunle Adeyeye with a backgrounder.
With the commencement of the 2019 electioneering campaigns, political parties have been unveiling their policy documents as a way of selling their parties and candidates to the electorate. The ruling All Progressives Congress APC tagged its policy document as taking Nigeria to the next level, while that of the People's Democratic Party is getting Nigeria walking again. The Social Democratic Party SDP, which is fielding former Cross River State Governor Donald Duke as its presidential candidate for next year's general election, has christened its campaign policy document as Getting the Basics Right. According to its manifesto, the party is promising radical improvements of access to finance and SMEs, improvement in tax collection and compliance using up-to-date technology, investment in non-oil and gas sectors, among other strategies towards growing the economy. The party is also promising specialized investment in mechanical farming and affordable credit to enhance investment in agro-storage and transportation with a view to curbing wastages in the agricultural chain. On education, the SDP promises to give priority to teachers' training, curriculum development and massive investment in educational infrastructure. In the area of healthcare, the SDP plans to increase budgetary allocation to the sector by over 35% and establish a specialist hospital in each senatorial district. This is in addition to ensuring equitable distribution of healthcare services and resources nationwide, as well as regular training of health personnel. The party also has master plans for economic sectors such as power, housing, environment, as well as security and foreign policy thrusts. The question is, how does the party intend to actualize these projections if it is successful in next year's general election? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria are waiting to provide answers.
All right, thank you very much, Kunle Adeyeye. Indeed, we already have guest house on the studios. Let's go straight away to introduce Professor Yowese Hahe, who is the Director General of the Donald Duke Presidential Campaign Organization. Professor Hahe, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
And also here with us in the studios is Dr. Abdul Isiaq, who is the Deputy National Chairman North of the SDP, as well as, of course, a member of the organizing committee for the Donald Duke campaign. Pleasure to have you with us on the program.
It's a pleasure. Morning, Nigerians.
And we do have Right Honorable Emeka Atuma. Emeka Atuma is the National Organizing Secretary, Social Democratic Party. Many thanks for joining us this morning on the program.
Thank you very much, Kirian.
And
good morning, Nigeria.
Gentlemen, you are most welcome. Getting the basics right. What basics are you referring to here? And I'm sure many Nigerians would like to know what went through the minds of your members who articulated this policy document to have come up with this, getting the basics right. And I'd like to begin with Emeka, who is the National Organizing Secretary of the party.
Thank you very much, Kirian. What led to this tag of getting the basics right? Because assessing today's Nigeria, we all will agree that a lot of things have gone wrong in the system. A society where things has become so much dysfunctional that the citizens themselves do not know what the hope of tomorrow will be. And one of those basic things that they should have as their right in a society that they are no longer accessible, if not being available. And Social Democratic Party looked at these very core areas like education and healthcare. These are the two major areas that bordering the minds of us that are in Social Democratic Party, and it's the issue of security. A non-secured society will not really be a place where people can strive in meeting up their aspirations, going by what is going on in Nigeria of today. At no time have Nigeria seen what they are seeing in the recent time in terms of people not being the life and properties are not actually protected as they should. And we are looking at it that the first assignment when SDP gets into power by next year is to address the issue of security extensively. I know that many will ask how will that be done, but in a security template, if you get in the basic right, you will understand that security is far more better when there is a community security, when community is developed and educated in such a manner that every person is looking out for the other. And in that, we will have a well organized security system, and then Nigerians will also strive within that system. All other security apparatus will also be empowered in such a manner with you mentioned something like ICT in a Social Democratic Party getting things right. When security departments are so empowered, what is meant for them are given to them to do the things they should do. The security system should be the way that it is, right for the people.
All right, Honorable Emeka Atuma, thanks a lot for your opening salvo. Let's bring in Professor Hahe, who earlier we introduced as the Director General of the Donald Duke Presidential Campaign Organization. You listen to your fellow SDP member talk about what the basics are that your party is seeking to get right. Could you provide further particulars as to what these basics are?
Certainly. It's good to be here again, now in a new capacity as the Director General of the Donald Duke Campaign Organization. I was an aspirant for that office. Today we are proud to have, Donald Duke as our presidential flag bearer. He symbolizes this getting the basic right. Getting the basic right in the Donald Duke presidency is getting the leadership right, getting the recruitment process right. The SDP had a transparent primaries in which I participated. Donald Duke won, and we all joined hands because all of us won. Today, Donald Duke represents that critical involvement of governance, good governance that emphasizes the importance of everybody. Everybody matters in an SDP government. It's not a government of governors or legislators or presidents. It's a government of the people. And that is why the slogan for the Donald Duke campaign is everyone matters. Your vote will matter. Your opinion will matter. How you want to be governed will matter. And above all, the dignity of the human persons in this country will matter. We are all decked here with our emblems, giving credence and respect to our so many heroes that have sacrificed their lives to keep Nigeria a democracy, a country free from all kinds of ideologies, including the one, Boko Haram, that recently took the lives of 100 gallant Nigerians. The lives of every single Nigeria matters to the SDP, and it is a tragedy if we lose one soldier. One soldier lost is one soldier too many. So as my colleague has said, the security of lives and property of Nigerians is #1 priority of the SDP. The dignity of finding jobs for our young people, of finding engagement with how everybody is looking for ways of keeping their families together, finding dignified ways of having money to put our children to school, being respected by giving them a first-class education, free, of course. Free education is one of our cardinal principles, and it can be done with a Donald Duke presidency. We have seen the dysfunctionality of the educational system in this country. Now, ASU is on strike again, and we dare not blame them. We dare not even make it a campaign issue because it involves all of us, and it is a tragedy because each time we lose critical hours of imparting knowledge to our young people, we are stealing their future. And one of the greatest basics that we have got right in the Donald Duke presidency is giving the young people the opportunity to rule this country again. Donald Duke and his running mate, Shehu Gabam, are highly educated young people, all of them below the age of 60. They have experienced the pains, the travails, the agonies of living in Nigeria. And we have watched progressively Nigeria get worse and worse. And we, the electorate, we, the citizens, are sold the dummy. Each time election is coming, we jump and say, anybody but the person who is in power. Because we watch that progressively we are getting worse. And then we get a new person, and we watch that person. And meanwhile, there's a slide getting worse. The Naira gets worse and worse. The cost of fuel gets higher and higher. The lifestyle of Nigerians gets worse and worse. The security of our lives is threatened every day. We're not getting a good country, frankly. Let us get the basics right. We've stolen the life of our young people. It is time to get a Donald Duke, a highly experienced young man with a track record of achievement to become the president. And that is why I am today serving as his Director General.
All right, Prof. It's interesting, because the demand that you are about to give to Nigerians, if you win election, is known to have governed the state in this country. We know him to have done well, as far as governance is concerned. But of course, he's appearing on a bigger, on a larger platform now. Let's look at the issue of your tag, which is to get the basics right. I believe it encapsulates all other sectors of our national life. And to get the basics right, one has to work it out. It has to be strategized. There has to be, structure that will enable you attain a particular position with respect to each of the sectors we're talking about: education, health, transportation, and what have you. Now, let me ask Dr. Abdul Isaac, who is the National Deputy Chairman North of the party. How does your party intend to do this, bit by bit? Because Nigerians will want to know, what are the structures? How are you going to achieve them? Yes, getting the basics right, okay. How do you go about them?
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigerians. First, I would like to lay the basis of people might have heard that we used to have SDP in the olden days. So why are we having it now? The point is that the SDP of the olden days actually died, but now it has resurrected and is going to have an internet life. Coming back to your question about getting it right, we have so many policy documents. I'm referring to documents of the first, second, and the third development plan, the DEFRI, the 9-point agenda, the MAMSA, and what have you. All those policy documents has actually identified problems. But we are saying that they are becoming less appealing to Nigerians. And what is it that SDP is going to do now about this? SDP are not looking at issues that provide more questions than answers. So in this policy development document of the SDP, we are looking at how issues, not those documents that provide and identify problems, but how. So in those how issues, SDP developed a template that has to do with the short-term plan, middle term, and long term. And in doing that, SDP is going to have a social contract with Nigerians. This social contract is our covenant with the Nigerians, and we want the Nigerians to hold us responsible to that. SDP is looking at the civil society. You don't pretend you have answers to all the questions of people. You don't pretend that the issue has to do with the economy, political, general development life of the nation. The people, the civil society, actually are the operators of this. So we are going to be providing a policy paper that has a practical implementations. And what are these practical implementations? Is to get from the civil society what actually are the matters. How did we arrive at where we are? And what are the answers to where we think we're going? And those are the how documents. We are on national TV. Well, some of the strategies of the party, of course, we cannot let it. But to tell Nigerians that we are not going into issues of questions of identifying problems. No! We have, the country should have gone far from that. So we are going to how issues.
I want you to explain one thing. Sorry, I'm not really cutting it short, but to provide some assistance for further clarifications. For instance, education.
Yes.
We know we have the different levels of education.
Yes.
Now, what is the plans of SDP to at least maybe, let's talk about the basic one, the basic education, for instance. Yes. The system, perhaps, in your own assessment, is not functioning, is dysfunctional. Now, what is SDP going to do to take basic education higher or better than it is now? Let's take that as a particular instance.
Okay, very good. Now, you begin to ask, why do ASU go to on strike? Simple thing. ASU needs some fundamental thing for operations of various institutions. And those things have not been there. ASU will tell you we have been on negotiating table for so number of years. And you ask, and we ask Nigerians, those implementers of this program and policies on education, check, where are their children? Of course, they are in Harvard, they are in London, they are abroad, they are in Dubai, they are everywhere. That is why they are insensitive to this process. Coming back to the basis, the primary education, the secondary and tertiary education. Now, sadly, the private sector has taken over this. The public schools are in a very pitiful stage. You don't need to go anywhere. Just drive. I'm from Kaduna State. If you drive in the morning along this coast, going to any interstate linkages, you'll find that if you're going in public school in the morning, you'll see the students, the pupils, outside roaming about at class hours. Yet you see in the private school, there's no single person outside, they're all in the classes. These are very disturbing things. You don't need to go far to begin to say. So it's because either the government or the policy seek not to address those issues. What SDP is going to do fundamentally, we now say, how do we used to get it right in the olden days, and why are we getting it wrong? Some of our fathers and grandfathers actually, it's not about the four walls of the classes. They actually learn under the tree. But why were they so well educated? And now, with all this policy formulation, change in curriculums and what have you, we are still not getting it right. So in this very aspect, SDP on education, like I told you, we are going to be having a covenant with Nigerians that in the first 100 days of Donald Duke presidency, the short-term basis, we are going to be addressing all these bases, like my colleagues here have mentioned, issue of education, issue of health, and issue of security.
All right, Dr. Isiak, thank you very much. Let's bring in again Honorable Atuma. We're still trying to elicit the specifics from you. I asked the question, and Professor Haye was saying, partly, that SDP is promising free education. Free education at what level?
Thank you.
And how do you intend to finance free education?
Thank you very much. I think, like my colleagues have rightly said, how do we get it right in terms of education? One of the few things that we considered on the policy table is how to unbundle the educational policy pyramid. And if we don't unbundle it, we probably may not be getting the right educational curriculums and functional schools in our various parts of the Federation. We're discussing here the presidency of the SDP. And today, a lot of things have been mobilized to be at the national level. That is why part of the crop of SDP is restructuring and unbundling few of these things. When we were growing up, in my days, we attended the public schools. And then the public schools, inspectorates are being sent from the local governments to come to see how the teachers were teaching us then. But such things are no longer functional. That is what has brought to the functionality of the educational system. We are looking at education that a lot of things are being mobilized and kept at the national level. By the time that we disintegrate it, taking things to their various levels, something like basic primary education, which is the primary level of education. Some of us experienced the universal primary education in the 70s. And then we had functional schools, where few Nigerians will go to public school and compete favorably with people when they in overseas. They travel overseas, they write a TOEFL, and they pass from public schools in the villages. SDP wants to return to those basics of forming a proper teachers training colleges, possibly in the entire senatorial 109 senatorial district of Nigeria. Because if your teachers are not trained well, they will not have the capacity of even teaching the people as they are coming up. There is a complete removal of those teachers training colleges that that could issue certificates equivalent to national diploma. And every person is now looking at a job that will now go from those that studied education from university to come to chiefs. And very many times, those people are not very disposed in going to these various rural areas of all states. All of them are looking for a bigger job. They want a private school system where they will be in Abuja, be in Lagos, be elsewhere in the capital cities, and then have their field there. But if the government is able to return back in establishing a quality and a quantitative teachers training schools where teachers will be trained and be retrained in order to pass on education to the people, that's the first step. The second step of actualizing, like you rightly said, that Prof did say a free education. I believe is in that concept of free education in terms of basic education, getting the basics, which is the primary education. The primary education is actually the foundation with which any child will be prepared, or any person in going higher and higher. So if we get the universal primary education right by having it free for all Nigerians to get in and be educated, learn how to write and read in the 6 years of being in school. And that's the first step of injecting knowledge to Nigerians when SDP comes to power.
How you fund that?
Thank you. In funding that, I think education has a way of funding itself. We have a lot of leakages in the economy. We have a lot of misplacement of priorities. We have to first prioritize education in the sense that we are a growing economy. Like you rightly can observe, that rather than we are progressing, we are deteriorating. Our population have not given us any advantage. Nigeria is a very blessed nation with natural resources. And if you go by it demographically, you will understand that there are few things that we are considering that are not so as important as education in order to prepare the future that will hold on to Nigeria. Okay. Those SSCs would have to be cut down. There's going to be a mobilization of funds in terms of personal tax contributions. Educational task is here. Nigerians are doing it now. We are receiving a lot of money in ETF, which is Educational Tax Fund. And such tax funds are not properly appropriated in the manner that it will impact on the life of Nigerians. Rather, the funds are used for various other things that are not really growing the educational sector.
Okay, Honorable Atuma, thank you very much. Professor, I would like you to also speak to the issue of the free education that you are promising. But before responding, there are some points that I would like you to bear in mind. Education is on the concurrent list, which means both the federal government and the state governments have a role in this. And when you look at the role that the two tiers of government have played, indeed, it's complementary. You have in place the Universal Basic Education Commission, and which tries to fund basic education depending on counterpart funding from state governments. Honorable Atuma talked about taxes. Since the Babangida administration, the military administration, we have had an education tax fund that funds the various tiers of government, including at the higher level of education, which is now known as TED fund. So what is it that the SDP is looking at differently to catalyze speedy growth in the education sector, other than what I have just itemized?
Thank you. The SDP is bringing to education political will. Political will because without education, everything crumbles. It is education that will take Nigeria to the next level, no other thing. The next level is the required level, the level that Nigerians have yearned for, that is away from collapse. The SDP will not do business as usual, which we have seen in the last 19 years. That is, give a proper budgetary allocation to education. We have 7% of our national budget to education. It's a disgrace. We need to have not less than 27% of our national budget to education. This is the expected. If you look around West Africa, almost all the countries in West Africa have allocated higher percentages of their national budgets to education. Now, how can we provide leadership if we're not doing that? Yes, another level will be to curb corruption. It takes political will to deal with the institutional corruption. The organizational structure of this country conduces to corruption. And if we come and say we are fighting corruption, and it will be more of the same thing, each government will come and prefer to be blindfolded where it does not touch their own members. The SDP is bringing political will to deal decisively with corruption in the educational sector, because corruption in the educational sector actually does exist, persists, and it's obnoxious and must be completely done away under the SDP government, which we are expecting. Much more than that, we are looking at engaging the private sector. It is amazing that most of Nigeria's today leadership and manpower was derived from a synergistic cooperation between private sector institutions, beginning all the way from the primary schools that we had, secondary schools that were run by missionaries. We woke up one day and took over all of those schools. We have to re-engage them back, possibly give them back to them. The SDP has a policy to engage the private sector in a robust engagement with education, and we're not going to be selective. Today, we are now having the police feels a normal university is not good enough. They established their own. Possibly there's no strike. The army now has their own university. We will not go that way. While those institutions we have, their universities, the public university where the ordinary citizens have access to, they will be accessible. They will have the highest quality of education. You were talking of concurrent nature. The SDP has the political will to do restructuring. Not restructuring as a political gimmick, but restructuring in a very concrete nature where anything that has never worked will be restructured, and education will be fundamentally restructured. We are going to send all the universities back to be controlled by the states, as is done in the civilized communities elsewhere in the world. In Western societies where we have some of the best institutions, they are controlled by the states in a structure where the federal government is sitting with a very heavy responsibility that has become the height of incompetence. Education is not being properly managed. SDP is going to train and retrain teachers, train and retrain professors, train and retrain everybody involved in the educational industry, which is the best industry, the highest industry.
There's an enactment from the National Assembly over the nation. It
overrides
whatever thing that is done
all
by
right.
the state.
Including, as we are proposing, paying teachers who are in the rural areas.
Yes. Pay them higher. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. We have a few minutes to go, but let's touch the economy, which is the hallmark of our national existence. It's very, very crucial, and without which what we are talking about, education, may not come to fruition. Now, Nigeria has been operating a mono economy for a very long time. One professor told me some time ago that Nigeria does not have an international product to market globally, apart from oil, which of course what we market is crude, which is a raw materials. Now, how does SDP intend to reverse this trend? Because even in the manufacturing sector, we are low as far as records are concerned. So what do you intend to do to reverse it?
Yeah, thank you very much once again. About the issue of economy and mono economy and the central focus on oil. It is because we refuse to develop two sectors, that of agri and that of infrastructural development. Agriculture is one of the highest employer of labor, meaning because it is an integrated processes from land clearing, tillage system, seedlings, improved seedlings, the research institution. It's a whole lot of things that everybody is involved. And we have countries in Africa that only rely on agricultural products. They don't have oil. But unfortunately, like we had in the research, that this oil may not be good news in the next 20, 30, 40 years. Because all the West African sub-region are now discovering oil. So it's no longer too much marketable. And what do you use oil for? All those facilities that go in oil, the new technology are bringing a lot of re-engineering in that aspect that has to do with gas, has to do with... So this oil thing is going to be a thing of the past. So the focus of SDP will be that of developing the agricultural sector so that from the rural farmer, because I told you it's an integrated ventures or enterprises where everybody is involved till it goes to the table anywhere. So what SDP will be planning to do is to encourage most of our people into farming, mechanized type of farming, not the peasantry one, so the commercial farming, I mean. Here, you know, it is said all over the world that it is probably only in Nigeria that you take a seed of any of these fruits, mango or whatever, you throw it on the floor and it grows on its own without no application of fertilizer.
Sorry, Dr. Ishak, let me just interject while you're still on the subject of agriculture. Part of the policy thrust of the SDP is still revise the land use tenure system, that's to say the Land Use Act, which of course is embedded in the Constitution. And in the 40 years that we've had the Land Use Act, it's been a major challenge to get it out of the Constitution and to reform it. What is the silver bullet that the SDP has for this purpose?
Yeah, you see, this is an ongoing thing. And it's because there's up to now no proper legislation to keep this Land Use Act into check. And that is why we keep on having disputes. The land disputes, the farmer, the herdsmen, whatever it is. So, but what we are thinking as a party is that the issue of this land use act, you call it, that is a policy statement that we need to encourage our people who will be going into the various legislative bodies so that we can have, we can nip it in the bud. But additionally, I'm more concerned to tell you about the agricultural sector because I take a visit to some African countries and I see what they are doing because they don't even have this oil, particularly issue of Kenya.
Dr. Siak, you know, we cannot continue with you on that, you know, because we are short of time. We'd like you to touch other issues as we're trying to round off, and that will take me to Honorable Altuma. And what I'm talking about here now is executive-legislative relationship, you know, in which, of course, the various subsystems interact in harmonious relationship. But in Nigeria, it has been so difficult since 1999 to have a harmonious relationship between the executive and legislature. How does SDP intend to handle this, Emeka?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think SDP government, SDP-controlled National Assembly will be able to harmonize between the executive and legislative relationship. The arrangement is simple. You see, a party that is driven without an ideology, they don't have one flank for which they are in the parliament or in the executive. They are working disjointedly, working in different ways, and that's why they may not agree. In an SDP family, where it's an ideological-driven party, both the president and the other legislators in the House, controlled National Assembly, have just one goal, and the goal is to champion and realize the party's manifesto. If that be the case, what that translates, whether in the legislative part or in the executive part, there's only one agenda, and that agenda is to translate whatever the party may have promised Nigerians to reality. So the friction of having problems, I was in the National Assembly for some years, and then as a PDP person. And in the PDP, we didn't have, sorry that I mentioned party, but this was my party. You know, we didn't have a proper ideological setting for which the party represents. And the president was working on the other part, and we were parliamentarians, we are fighting what I could refer as survival of the fittest. You know, when you are not recognized, when there's some kind of, as a reason of our military interregnum, you know, mental or executive mentality of being the supreme power, not regarding any reliance on National Assembly. That brought a lot of frictions within the parties. But however, our nascent democracy will be turning more than 20 years next year. And I believe a child that is born in 1999 and coming to the point of 20 years, all the systems should have known how to operate. That's what I look at it. but one more thing I'd like to include is the question that was raised by your colleague about expunging the Land Use Act from the Constitution. You understand is really inside the problems of the Land Use Act of 1978, which has brought a lot of crisis. And when the land is being managed by governor and how to apportion it for agricultural use. The foremost thing is that SDP would work symmetrically in ensuring that that very act is removed, is an act. It doesn't have to be part of the Constitution. The Constitution has been altered 2 times without any recourse to expunging that act and make it stand alone, to allow it and enable the parliamentarians work on it as when due. So, but amending the Constitution is a more rigorous way of getting things. We will need an education of Nigerians. We need them to understand that those that did that act, bringing that act into the Constitution, was completely, I will refer it as a mischief. And it will not help the nation to grow, whatever his intentions were.
All right, thank you very much. But still, if you have to engage in land reform through alterations of the Land Use Act, it's a constitutional process.
Exactly.
All right, okay, let's take the tweets that have come in from our viewers. Sani Michael Omakoji has this tweet. From investigation, most political parties have well-articulated manifestos, but the problem some of us who are advocates of good governance foresee is lack of implementation. I just hope that they have not all gone to hire professors to pen down these beautiful manifestos.
All right, we have Festus Akimbewe. Unlike APC and PDP, it seems SDP is still trying to find its voice and a distinctive message. Right now, the website of SDP is not functioning, and if SDP cannot run a functioning website, then it hasn't got what it takes to run Nigeria. That's from Festus, not me.
Okay, Montana Frank tweets, now political manifestos ought to be clearly scripted policies which would guide political parties on what to do, how to do it. Now, it is high time Nigerians matched the actions of politicians with their manifestos.
Now, Mike Anyako, he says manifestos do not work in Nigeria because of antecedents of our politicians. SDP, by name, has social inclinations. Are we going to forgo laissez-faire to command the economy? Are we going to abandon Bretton Woods advices and pursue our own organic ones?
Now, this is coming from Law Alpha C. The party, referring to SDP, has lost considerable political weight nationally and may not be able to contend with the major parties at the center.
Mike Anyako, how will the value of Naira be determined under SDP regime? What will be our foreign policy dynamics? Should we jettison the West and East Asia? How do we attract and encourage industrial development? How about youth employment and empowerment? We need answers.
Okay, well, Kirian, these are some of the tweets that we'll take in the meantime. What I would like Professor Hahe to also speak to will be the point he talked about, that the SDP will propose 27% of the national budget for education. If we have 100%. So if you take 27 out of 100, you are then left with 73%. What percentage would the SDP government allocate to health, allocate to security, allocate to infrastructure? If you break down infrastructure, you would know that these are also major areas of national need. So from 27% for education, let's assume that is settled. What percentages are you proposing for the other sectors?
I can tell you that when we start from there, that is the basic. We told you that we will start from the basic. Then every other structure will fit into this basic thing. And the significant thing is job, infrastructure. Infrastructure is not necessarily something that government does. The money that will be available to our government and to the Nigerian people is not necessary from the treasury. If you have the right environment, if you knew how much money the diaspora sends into Nigeria, it will amaze you. You jumpstart the economy and every other thing will be rightly taken care of. For instance, if you allocate even 10% in tourism, you will find out that the participation of the private sector in that industry will provide perhaps as much money as we have voted in for education. All we have done is to guarantee a benchmark below which we will not allow. Money will be available in different sectors with different percentages, so don't be scared. When this has always been the issue, they say, if we give education 27, the rest of the people will not get anything. They will get commensurate with the need, because with education you are funding defense. With education you are funding health. With education you are funding agriculture. So don't be frightened. The principal cardinal issue with the SDP is the basic.
Right,
so we are going to...
We actually ran out of time, you know, and I want to believe, quite frankly, that you have made your points here, although we didn't have enough time to go into other issues like budgeting, budget delays, and what have you. At this point, we would like to call it a day for this very conversation, and we would like to thank you, Prof, you know, for being here, Professor. Yosha Director General Donald Duke Presidential Campaign Organization. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
And Dr. Abdul Isiaq, National Deputy Chairman, Social Democratic Party, that is North. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
It's my pleasure.
Right Honorable Emeka Atuma, National Organizing Secretary of the Social Democratic Party. It's been good hearing from you. I wish all of you luck come 2019 elections. This is a Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break right now, but we come back. We'll go straight to the second part of our discussion this morning, which is on disease control. Stay with us.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service. Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, the resurgence of cholera in Nigeria this year alone has been alarming, with hundreds of deaths. deaths recorded across 29 states of the Federation.
Quite alarming indeed, Kingsley. And lately, there is also the scare about yellow fever after the Nigeria Center for Disease Control confirmed 9 suspected cases in Edo State, a situation that has triggered another round of ongoing immunization against yellow fever.
Indeed, Kirian, if our history and climatic conditions are anything to go by, the dry season comes with diseases such as cerebrospinal meningitis and other respiratory infections. The question is, where are we ultimately in terms of disease control in Nigeria today? Well, we have with us in the studios the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu, to provide answers. Dr. Ihekweazu, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Kingsley, thank you very much for having me.
Okay.
And it would be right to ask him, Kingsley, to really tell us where we are or where you are with respect to disease control.
I was just going to, Kirian, you know, I'm sure he will come to that. It is something very significant happened a couple of weeks ago when the President signed into law the bill for the establishment of giving legal backing to the Center for Disease Control. What does that mean in terms of the profile of the center and how it is able, therefore, to pursue its mandate with regard to being the fulcrum of disease control in the country?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kingsley. Great to be on your show again. I think the legal mandate given to us by Mr. President after an exhaustive process through both the Senate and the House of Representatives really shows at least that this government is really taking this responsibility seriously, and we're learning the critical lessons from the Ebola response, the success and its failures, that really to galvanize and organize society in a way to respond, to prevent, detect, and respond to these diseases, that you really need an institution with the skills, capacity, resources to do so. And this requires a building process that will take time, but we have started. And it is in recognizing this critical role, the need to build on it, the need to give it the resources, the human resources, the technical resources. And so I think Nigerians must be happy right now that, you know, the agitations over many years, and this started long before my time as DG, that we're now in a place, beginning of a journey to build an institution that Nigerians will be proud of.
All right, let's go to specifics now, and that's with respect to the situation report on the outbreak of cholera in Edo State. Is that correct? And if that is, what is the level of infestation in that area?
Yeah, Kieran, it's yellow fever in Edo, actually, that we reported on. So there have been a few confirmed cases of yellow fever in Edo. Right now, we have a rapid response team there supporting the state government in the response. You know, the sad thing with yellow fever, unlike Lassa and to an extent meningitis, that this is a completely vaccine-preventable disease with a single shot of a vaccine that is free at every healthcare facility in Nigeria at birth. It's part of the routine childhood immunization schedule. And once you get that single shot in your childhood, you will never have yellow fever. So this outbreak is really as not just a failure of the system, it's also a failure of all of us as individuals in taking our children to be vaccinated. Having said that, we are faced with this situation at the moment. Once we complete our assessment, we'll work with the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, who is responsible for immunization, and potentially plan a reactive vaccination campaign specifically for Edo State. There's an ongoing preventive vaccination campaign going on now in 6 other states, led by NPACDA, just to mop up cases that haven't been vaccinated in the past. But we're doing everything possible to stop the spread of this particular cluster in Edo. But the issue I'd always want to remind people of, we all need to take common responsibility for these challenges. There are some that are a little bit more complex. Lassa, we wished we had a vaccine, we don't. But for yellow fever, please, you prevent it by taking your children in childhood as part of the routine immunization schedule. Get your shot, you're protected for life, and you can rest at ease.
Who is susceptible to yellow fever attack? Is it only children? Sorry.
Yeah, no, having said that, when I say children, anyone can. If you have traveled, you would know that you are required to do the yellow card and get the vaccine. So everybody has access to the vaccine. But the people that we have free vaccination available for through the public health system are children aged under 1 through the routine schedule. And then travelers also get it. For all others, we have to now make extra plans to vaccinate them, which is what is happening through the campaigns going on in a few states. And this is probably what will happen in response to the outbreak in Edo State.
Now, from every of a collaboration between your agency and traditional rulers and the other leaders at that local level to help facilitate vaccination or other medical services that should be available to the rural populace?
Yeah, Kieran, I think this is a very important question. Actually, every part of this country has specific, based on its own topography and ecology, diseases that are more prevalent in that part. In the northwest, we have a lot of meningitis. We're going into January, like Kingsley said. We found quite a bit of monkeypox in the south. Lassa, you know where it is in the Do and Ondo area. So everywhere has its own pockets of disease that are prevalent. Our role as NCDC, which is one of the mandates now given us, is to coordinate the response. So to work with whatever partner is available. In some places, there are rural, traditional leaders, other religious leaders, but our critical stakeholders are the states. So the state is the first statutory level of government responsible for a response, our state and local government. So we consider them as our primary clients. So our work is really to support the states to have a robust initial response, because every outbreak starts with 1 or 2 cases. And whether it becomes a big or small outbreak depends on how you respond to those 2 first cases. And that response doesn't come from Abuja. It comes from the state capital. So our priority over this year, next year, is really to support the states as much as possible and ensure that they have the labs, the surveillance infrastructure, public health emergency operation centers to start a response, knowing that we're there to support them at all times.
Dr. Hekwe, I would like to return to the yellow fever, because when we were reviewing our papers, it must have been sometime last week or earlier this week, the issue came up from our reviewer as to who is entitled to be vaccinated. In other words, because there was something about ages, is it 6 months or 6 years to a certain level. So again, for purposes of clarification, who can take a yellow fever vaccine? That's the first point. Second point, you said that a yellow fever vaccination could give you immunity for a lifetime. But then how do you explain the fact that the yellow travel card, which is the evidence of your being vaccinated, usually will be valid for 10 years?
Okay. So, Casey, those are 2 important points to clarify. The agency responsible for this is the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, and their policy is every child under 1 has access free to a shot of the yellow fever vaccine in childhood. Now, however, the vaccine is safe to be given to anyone at any age, but government provides it free for this particular age group. Now, previously, to your second question on duration of protection, previously, the science led us to a conclusion that was protective for 10 years, and you had to renew your vaccination every 10 years. Now, you do that because when you introduce a vaccine, you don't have long-term studies. But as we use this vaccine for many more years, we realize that actually it protects for life. There hasn't been a single case of yellow fever reported in any individual that has had 1 shot at any point. So that recommendation has been changed formally, so you don't need to renew your yellow card now. Your yellow card is valid for life once you've had 1 shot of the vaccine. So whenever you've had a shot of vaccine, childhood or when you're traveling, that is fine. You cannot get yellow fever if you've been vaccinated.
All right.
You know CSM, that's cerebrospinal meningitis. I recall it was just during the orientation, the youth service, they came around and then gave us a jab for CSM. I'm not sure what duration it serves for protection, but why do we appear not to mobilize for vaccination against CSM in the areas where the disease is endemic?
Kelsey, we actually do, but CSM is a little bit more complex. Okay. There are different serogroups involved. Okay. And the serogroup A, which used to cause most of the disease in Nigeria, has now more or less disappeared because of vaccination, but a new serogroup has emerged for which there is not a commonly available vaccine. So with CSM, it's a little bit more complex, but for yellow fever, it's straightforward. And that's kind of the distinction I like to make, yes.
All right. Let me ask you this. Now, how does the agency intend to key into the declaration of a state of emergency on water, sanitation, and hygiene by the president, with respect to disease control?
Cholera, yes. So, I've been on your show severally to talk about cholera. Cholera There is a vaccine available, but it's not part of the childhood immunization schedule. And it's a good one. It only protects for 3 to 5 years. So it goes to your point, which is why at the heart of cholera response is what we call WASH, water sanitation, water hygiene and sanitation. You know, there's nothing LCDC can do from Abuja to stop the spread of cholera if we're not providing clean water and sanitation facilities for our people. So our advocacy agenda here has been really to ask state governments that, yes, great infrastructure is important. Our people need flyovers to get to work in some states, depending on the traffic situation. But we need to be alive. Previously, water used to be a very important political agenda, but these days it seems to have gone down the list of priorities that we have. So we're really working with the states, appealing to them to listen to Mr. President. Let's stay alive, and that way we'll enjoy electricity, roads, and the infrastructure. So let's go back and focus on providing clean water for our citizens. Reduce the number of open defecation, because this is what leads to cholera. People, when you don't provide water and sanitation facilities, people resort to open defecation. That feces is then carried back into the streams. People fetch water from down the streams, cholera circulates. So if we provide clean water for our people, they will not have cholera. So Mr. President's focus on this and declaring a state of emergency really demonstrates that he's taking it seriously. And he's mobilizing the rest of us, NCDC, Ministry of Water and Environment, Ministry of Agriculture, critically, state governments and local governments, to come together. Cholera requires a multi-sectoral approach. We will play our bit, and we really ask all the other government parastatals, NGOs, to support us on this journey. Schools, critically, schools. Communities, churches. You go to many schools, they have a lovely classroom. They don't have a toilet where children wash their hands or use the bathroom.
It's a question that we had asked you sometime in the past on Good Morning Nigeria, and I would like to repeat that question. And it has to do with the level of cooperation and collaboration you get from the subnational governments. Because reporting is very important. Particularly when there's an outbreak, and the states and local government being the first responders, this is important. But where are we now in terms of, shall we say, awareness by the subnationals as to what their own responsibility is in terms of the disease control, disease prevention and control?
Because almost every week, I'm on a trip to, in fact, as I leave your studio, I'm heading to Lokoja to work with the Kogi state government. So our role really is to work with the states. I think we're on a journey. Some have progressed more than others. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I was in Ebonyi State. The governor of Ebonyi State has really taken this seriously. This is maybe because of the prevalence of Lassa, but maybe because it's just his own initiative. So in certain states, they find it difficult working with the teaching hospitals in their states. Ebonyi has demonstrated they built a whole virology center within a federal teaching hospital. And that's the type of collaboration we're seeking. So I'm going to Kogi this morning to launch the State Public Health Emergency Operations Center. So this is where the response starts. And I think I'm very happy you've raised that point. Some states have been more progressive than others. I've spoken to our governors during the Governors Forum a number of times. We continue to work together. So we hope that as the political season escalates or de-escalates, we can focus on these activities that are important to serve our people.
Are we seeing enough facilities and equipment at the subnational levels in terms of healthcare?
So, Kingsley, you know, it's a big and complex country. Very often, maybe at the state level, we see enough. But, you know, the Honorable Minister of Health has really made primary health care the heart of his agenda. This means he has to work with the state government. He's prioritized primary health care, speaks about it all the time. The 1% has just been approved. We're waiting for the funds to come through. All of this money is going to go through down to the primary health care centers, which is where most Nigerians access care. If PHCs are working in Nigeria, our work is made a lot easier because we now work with the local government and these facilities, get the data we need, respond when we need to. So everything we do in healthcare is ultimately dependent on a good efficient primary health care center, which is at the heart of the minister's agenda.
Now, what will appear to be the final question for this segment. Malaria scourge has been said to be gaining ground now in Nigeria and other parts of the world, and that's by WHO. What is your agency doing with respect to curbing the menace of malaria?
So malaria is a very complex disease. Unfortunately, we don't have a vaccine, so we have to rely on several public health interventions. Some of them rely on the parent at home to make sure that children sleep under bed nets all the time, not sometimes or only on weekends, but really sleep under bed nets all the time. The second bit is when they do have a fever, to take them to a primary health care center. Don't try and self-medicate, so that you can test. If it's malaria, we treat for malaria. If it's not malaria, we look for other causes. So the era of self-treatment is over, or self-diagnosis. So really, it's a multi-pronged attack against malaria, and we have to keep collaborating with people, with communities, NCDC, the malaria elimination, National Malaria Elimination Program, and work together. But, Kieran, unfortunately, we don't have a magic bullet for malaria. Having said that, it's actually declining, not as quickly as we would like in Nigeria. It means that we have to keep pushing on this particular disease.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ihekweazu. Let's just read through some of the tweets that we have, Kieran. Nigerians have sent in their comments on disease control. Suleiman Babagana tweets. It says, revival of the colonial environmental inspection system would be a step in the right direction.
Now, Delejak Solomon, Nigeria's public health challenges continue to grow. Rapid population growth, increasing movement of people, and destruction of infrastructure in the northeast of Nigeria following the Boko Haram insurgency and outbreaks from new and re-emerging pathogens. May God heal our land.
Adam Abdullahi tweets, let's talk about the yellow fever. As I just read, there is an outbreak in 5 states so far, including the FCT. People need to know about this and how to contain it or where to take the vaccine.
Now, Mohammed Sanusi says, first of all, is to adequately control the practitioners to make sure there is professionalism.
And Idris Kidado Aliu tweets, now to improve healthcare in the country, more effort on preventing outbreaks of the disease must be intensified, as well as improvement in primary healthcare throughout the country. Dr. Ihekweazu just addressed that. Yes.
Now, Adam Abdullahi says, with the constant population growth and environmental challenges in Nigeria, it's very crucial for our country to take national health matters seriously. Today, in this country, our health system lacks the basic tools and trained practitioners.
Ali Baba May tweets, now, in controlling diseases, media houses